Hello, I am Nayan Chanda, editor of Yale Global Online, and we are delighted to have with us in our studios Bo Ekman. Bo Ekman is the founder and executive chairman of Tällberg Foundation. Bo, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you have spent an enormous amount of time studying this climate issue and the planetary health. Now, we are facing, in North America at least, an Arctic winter. So people are asking, is the global warming story for real? What do you say?
Well, we share your Arctic cold also in my neck of the woods in Sweden and in Northern Europe. And I'm afraid it's for real, and this is part of the consequences of global warming.
How do you explain global warming causing Arctic cold?
Yeah, it seems to be a paradox, but my scientist friends tell me it is not, and they explain it this way: the Arctic, if you use this as a model of the North Pole area, the Arctic area. The air pressure has over time been very stable, and around the pole there has been sort of a fence of between the cold air and the warmer air down further to the south. Now this fence have been weakened, and tons of very cold air, Arctic air, are seeping down towards Europe and towards...
this is in the form of jet stream.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
This fence is actually part of the circular jet stream. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing is that up here, on the cap, the global warming is at its apex in the world. And I have personally traveled to the Arctic for many years to study the advancement of global warming and what it does to the land ice, to the sea ice, and to the people who live up there. And combining the witness of my eyes and the experience of the people who live there and the scientific evidence makes me convinced that this is for real. Also, the long-term projection through complex mathematical models has for decades told us basically that this is the story is going to happen. And just north of Greenland, the temperature has risen with 4 degrees. Wow. Average. And the place I go to in Greenland is called Ilulissat. Mm-hmm. Beautiful place. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the more mighty glaciers are emptying its ice in the Atlantic. There, when I started to travel there, the ice moved at the speed of 18 meters a day. And 10 years later, it was 38 meters a day, and now it's up to over 45 meters a day.
So almost, so the word glacial speed has to be revised because
yes, exactly.
It is sprinting rather than...
It's becoming Godspeed.
Yes. So, but apart from what you observed yourself in terms of global warming accelerating the melting of ice, what are the scientific evidence globally that you have to indicate that there is indeed a global warming?
Well, the density of CO2 in the atmosphere was started to be measured in the 50s by an American, Keeling, out in Hawaii. And
so this density of CO2 actually indicates global the greenhouse gas.
Yes.
Which caps the temperature. Heat cannot get out of the atmosphere, it stays within.
It caps the solar energy.
Yeah.
it doesn't leave out. And also the shrinking of the ice, I should say, the shrinking of the ice, the sea ice, the Arctic sea ice has been staggering since '79 when we first started to measure with help of US satellites. The width and the depth of the ice, it's shrunk with more than 30%, 35%.
So going back to the CO2, you are saying that you started measuring that in the
in the 50s, yeah. And we now know that CO2 oscillated between 190 ppm, which is parts per million, and 280.
So in a million sort of molecule of air,
yes,
300. How much was it? 100?
When we had the stable situation of the last 10,000, 12,000 years, it was oscillated between 190 and 280 at the top. Now it is at 390, which is very alarming, and it's pushing up.
So what it means is that 390 ppm of CO2 in the air increases tremendously possibility of the atmosphere becoming warmer and warmer.
Yes, exactly. That's the result. And of course, CO2, the emissions from, for example, fossil fuels, combustion of fossil fuels is one of the biggest, but there are also other sources of greenhouse gases like methane, and we are on our way towards 450, if not 500. And scientists like Jim Hansen at NASA and Columbia University has, together with a number of scientists, convincingly told us that the icing of the poles only starts at a density of CO2 of 450 plus or minus 100. So if we want to be on the safe side, it's my conviction, reading and seeing of this is that we should backtrack to 350, at least.
So 450, if it reaches 450, the chance that the polar ice would start melting.
Yes.
And once start melting, there is no going back.
No. It's irreversible. But of course we can, with new energy technologies and with new consumption patterns and new living patterns, we can stall the emissions and we can possibly backtrack. I'm an optimist there.
So that is exactly what I was going to ask, that it is now 390.
Yeah.
And the target that we want to bring it down to 350.
Yes.
How does one reach that goal? What are the...
Well, it's a mixture of policies. I think one of the most important policies is to have a global carbon tax. That you put a price on emissions that will force the market to develop new technologies that have the capacity to decrease that. My country, Sweden, installed its first tax on carbon in 1990, and today we are well on our way to become carbon neutral. It's been a rapid and very successful development, and
so what it means, the word carbon neutral, it means that you are not emitting any more CO2?
Exactly. Exactly. The US emits 20 tons per person, and Swedes emit today less than 6 tons per person.
Wow.
And our standard of living is, as good as yours.
Yeah. So, so the carbon tax is one, and what are the other things one can do?
Well, it's of course new energy technologies, clean energy technology, and the most hopeful is of course solar technology that will never go out of that source will not stop for another billion of years. And I'm very hopeful that there's mega investments done by China, also here and in Europe, and there are a lot of good brains at work. So I think the efficiency of solar energy will increase exponentially, and the costs will go down. I'm also hopeful of a third and a fourth generation of nuclear power, and of course also more efficient combustion engines. And they are already now hitting the market, but the learning curves are very fast. We need better insulation, we need lighter materials and whatnot. And you also can see that parts of the non-matter-based or non-atom-based economy is growing very fast.
Digital economy.
Yeah, digital economy.
Which doesn't use atoms much.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Now,
it uses brains.
Yes. Now, the point is that as we have seen in Copenhagen, that the countries gathering there simply could not agree on how to go about capping the emissions. Now, what you are suggesting ultimately requires countries to cede a bit of their sovereignty for the common good. Now, is that possible? Has it happened before that people have actually given up a little bit of the sovereignty in order to achieve the common objective?
Yes, it happens. Happens all the time, and it happens today. The basic reason for moving in that direction, that is, I don't mean to do away with nation states. We need them for our cultural identity, for our political processes and building our communities and so forth, is that we have become so deeply interdependent in certain aspects of life, like energy production, like dependence on ecosystem services like water, forest, land, fisheries, and so forth. And of course, the climate can't be fixed by any one single nation. It has to be fixed in consort between all nations. Now, I think I think that's in your question, that the present design of negotiations is not
conducive to
conducive to solve the problem. The negotiations, like the Copenhagen negotiations, or you call the Kyoto Protocol process, is designed to still maximize each nation's interests. And at these meetings, I've been there, watching them, studying them. Every delegation represents its nation's interest.
So one little part of the planet they represent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or a big part of the
Big
planet.
planet, yeah.
Like China or United States and so forth, the two biggest emitters. And of course they link the curbing of emissions and the acceptance of new levies, for example taxes, as a threat to economic growth, to prosperity, to profits, and also to security and military strength. So this is a very, very complex debate. Very complex debate, but we have to rise to the occasion, and we have to be able to deal with complexity. We can't just deal with simplicity, as simplicity is not there.
The planetary system is complex.
Yeah.
And we have to grapple with the complexity.
Yeah.
And design policies which actually takes into account the complex interdependence and interconnectivity of issues.
Yeah, but you were asking, also in your question was, are there any process? Are there examples of supranational successful processes, endeavors? And I would like to point to the European Union. The basic reason for the European Union to come, to be created, was to neutralize the rivalry between Germany, France, and Britain.
Yeah.
That had gone on for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. And two very creative statesmen, Jean Monnet and Robert Schuman, who were, by the way, exiles during the war here, and were part of the debate here, how to organize the peace, Bretton Woods and United Nations and so forth. Now, they were very skillful in understanding that you have to start this project in the economy. So they aligned the interests of Germany and France in the production of steel. So that was the origin, the coal and steel union between Germany and France. And out of that grew
the common market.
The common market and the European Parliament and the European Commission and so forth, which is very important in all our lives.
And also, I think the ozone depletion crisis that
the Montreal Protocol.
Montreal Protocol, I think perhaps is another example where.
Yeah, that's also a very good, but I'm afraid it's an exception to the rule. We have, I get tens of thousands of agreements. I've studied 500 international agreements in the field of environment, and there's only a handful of them. Maximum, I would say, 5 that have been accomplished to the letter. So the like
the Kyoto Protocol.
You like the Kyoto?
Yeah, it has it's just a piece of paper.
Yeah, exactly. And Sweden is situated by the Baltic Sea, and the Baltic Sea is one of the most polluted seas in the world.
It's kind of dead, right? There's no.
There is, up to 35% of the Baltic is now dead, and we are 9 nations bordering to the Baltic, and we have had agreements, and the efficiency of these agreements are like 20-25%.
Yeah.
It's a very sad story, which means that we have to assume a leadership. I not say them, I said we have to assume a leadership that expands our capacity for solidarity, and in order to do things in common, the things that we need to do in common to solve problems. So in that sense, yes, sovereignty must cede to the problem,
but
in the best interest of myself.
Yeah.
So there's a direct link between self-interest and smart policies.
Yeah. Now this self-interest that has now become predominant since the economic crisis of 2008 is that we have to protect our market, we have to protect our industry, and protect our jobs. Now, in this climate, is climate change going to take a backseat?
It is. It has a backseat, which is an appalling lack of responsibility. If you are driving a car towards the rim and you see there is a rim, you better brake in time, put the brakes on in time. And science tells us again and again now with increasing precision that we are approaching tipping points. We're losing the chicken race. So the time is not on our side, but of course there's still time. There came a book, very interesting book, a few months ago, written by an American scientist at UCLA, where he described the world. His name is Smith, Professor Smith. Describes the world in 2050, assuming that we will not be able to stall climate change. And that describes a world here in the Americas where the most habitable part will be Canada, and especially northern Canada. And as we already know, the northern rim of Alaska, Canada, and Russia is deeply affected by the warming, the thawing of the ground, and so forth. And in Europe, we will see major migration towards the north. And we also already see here in the United States how the Southwest is hit by drought and wildfires and so forth. And the scientist tells me now that we will have a record El Nino next year. So I say to the Southwest, brace yourself for another hardship period.
So, so the situation looks pretty dramatic, and yet we seem to be kind of oblivious of the danger that is staring at us face. Now, how does one go about finding some recourse to this at a non-governmental level?
Yeah, that's where there's millions and millions of young people and businesses that are now driven by a new worldview. They understand that the world is not steady state, it's emergent. They understand that the world is complexity, and that the world is also self-organizing. They have a quite different understanding of the role of evolution, and that they are part of evolution. And I see in that context the emergence of fantastic new technologies, materials, information technologies, and so forth. And I think that hope is very much must be derived of us understanding the world as complex as it is.
And then
there are, of course, limits to conventional growth, but I don't think there are any limits to human development as a collective. So I don't see it as a threat that we become 9 billion or even 10 billion. That will be a source of new energy, new innovation, new creativity.
Well, on that optimistic note, thank you, Bo Ekman, for visiting us and for your interview with us. Thank you.
Thank you.